a teenager in the 1960s, I'd come to the Cavern Club in Liverpool to listen to groups playing a new kind of music that became known as Merseybeat. One of the groups that regularly played at the Cavern was the Valkyries. I went to the same school as 4 of the members of this group, and I can clearly remember the shock felt by the headmaster and teaching staff when Tony Conway turned down a university place to play saxophone with the group. "50 years later, in 2013, I met the Valkyries bass player Alan Burton. Alan had plenty of interesting stories to tell about those heady days of playing in a Merseybeat group, and he was still in contact with other former members of the Valkyries. So here was the opportunity for me to find out what it was like to have been directly involved in the Merseybeat revolution, and to answer questions such as, why did Merseybeat have such a unique and exciting sound? Where did it come from? And why was it centred on Liverpool? Let's start by hearing what the members of the Valkyries can tell us about how they got involved with Merseybeat music and how they met and formed the group.
My first guitar, my sister bought me for my 13th birthday. She bought me this great big guitar I could hardly handle, and I learned to play on that. And then I had a pickup put on that, a big white Royal pickup I think it was. And a few of us played in the youth club. About 17 of us played guitars. So John Adams learned to play the drums, and Tony Conway learned to play the clarinet at school first, and sort of expanded onto the saxophone. And then gradually the numbers whittled down till there was only like 7 guitarists. No, I'm exaggerating, of course, but it ended up with we didn't have a bass player. Anyway, a few guitarists and no bass player. And then one day, Ian and Tony turned up at our front door in Goodwin Avenue, and we were like, oh, no, that's... And they gave me a bass guitar and said, "You're the bass guitarist." They just bought this bass guitar for £25, which I still owe Tony. And I was the bass guitarist, which I didn't want to be really, because I'd never played a bass guitar. I never even held one before that. But I wasn't a very good guitarist, I have to say.
My dad had the music shop, so I used to be in the shop all the time on Saturday afternoon, and people would be coming in to get the strings and things, get the guitars tuned, and then finding out what they were playing, and then hearing Lonnie Donegan, and then I got the record, and then I wanted a guitar then, so I got a guitar for me 11th birthday, I think it was. And the first guitar I got was a Spanish one. That was there was a story behind that. We got all the buskers then in Liverpool. They were busking on the streets with the guitars. And this particular busker, when he was drunk, and the policeman asked him to stop playing. Because where we lived in Prescott Street, the police station was just a couple of doors up the road. And he wouldn't stop, so in those days they could do this sort of thing. So the policeman got a guitar and smacked him over the head with it and broke the neck off. So then he brought it into my dad's to repair it. I think my dad bought it off him for £0.50 or something. And that became, when I wanted a guitar, that was the one I got. I met Alan. He was introduced to me from a friend. I went to one school and Alan went to another. And the friend in my school who I sat by, said he knew that I played the guitar, and he'd actually been in the skiffle group we had at school. And he said, "Oh, a friend of mine, he sings and he plays the guitar as well, and he's got a band." So he said, "I'll tell him about you." So he did, and he introduced me to Alan. And then we got friendly, and then I joined the band he had, which then became the Valkyries.
And nearly 60 years later, Ian is still playing guitar. He's currently the lead guitar with Karl Terry and the Cruisers, one of the oldest Merseybeat groups still active.
The heart of Texas, right at Frisco Bay. Along the same new week when I do a beat. All cats want to dance with.
My mother was very happy because she loved singing, and that's what got me going. And she'd sing in the kitchen, and I'd harmonise with her, that type of thing. So she was the musical one. My dad sat in the corner being grumpy, but he was a lovely man. He they were both fantastic. But it was my mum that gave me the musical enjoyment. She made me appreciate. I had two older brothers who were into all the jazz and swing. I grew up listening to all that music. So when Ian came along and he brought this acoustic guitar and strummed, and I thought, well, that looks easy. Can I have a go at that? And that's what triggered me off. That first one he gave me, acoustic, it was an old battered acoustic one, and I got through with that. Then he suddenly appeared again, Ian, with this electric guitar, but you wouldn't believe it. It was it was painted white, the body, and it had been cut out very roughly from a piece of wood, and it was about that thick. Right, now I think his dad had made it, or his uncle, but the neck of it was from an old German guitar, and it was fantastic. A really curved, a nice curved fretboard, and he had a pickup on it, and one control knob, it might have been a volume control, and he said, you can have this one. What a mate, just to do that. And I thought, an electric guitar? What am I going to do? I haven't got an amplifier. What can I do, But luckily, he was starting up the group and things, so they had amplifiers, I could plug that in. He may have done it because he wanted me to play an electric guitar with the band, you see. He gave me two guitars in the period of a couple of years, and then he turned up saying, I've got a group going based in St Anselm's with Alan Burton, Tony Conway, and John Adams on the drums. And I didn't know John Adams or Tony Conway, but I turned up at this classroom, and it was just a school dance in a classroom. And we were doing the Buddy Holly stuff, and, I don't think it was Beatles then. It was Buddy Holly, Elvis, Everly Brothers, those sort of songs, It was good fun. We loved that sound, the nice open chords, and Ian and I harmonising. It was good. So with the Valkyries, as I say, it was a long string of practising, playing, usually practising in John Adams's house in the front room. And his kit took up most of the room. And it was so loud, it was just unbelievable. But his mother...
In January 1964, the Valkyries manager, Adrian Campbell Kelly, upset Valkyries fans by removing Billy from the group, reducing the lineup to 4. But it wasn't long before Billy moved to another group, the Pathfinders. This wasn't an untypical scenario. Group lineups in the 1960s were constantly changing. 50 years on, Billy May is still performing both as a solo artist and providing support to other local groups, and he has lost none of his enthusiasm as a musician.
Downtown searching for and looking all around, so I get me a yellow cab going downtown. Call a loaded taxi, pay up everybody's tab with some $20 bills. I said, catch that yellow cab, baby. Is that you? Oh, baby.
During a visit to the Cavern Club in Liverpool, Tony Conway explained how he came to be a member of the Valkyries.
When we were at school, And I was like a sort of fat, stupid little boy, and trying to keep in with the cool guys at school. And there was this chap called Alan Burton, and he decided, I think, with his other cool mates, that they were going to form a jazz band. So I think Alan said he was going to play the trumpet, and somebody else was going to play the trombone. So I said, I'll play the clarinet. And anyway, this all right then. And so I went off and bought a clarinet. And anyway, by the time I finally decided I was good enough on the clarinet, all the cool guys had moved on to guitars. You know, they ditched this idea of the jazz band. So I was sort of left out in the cold for a minute, and then I thought, well, I'll change to a saxophone. And actually, it's an easy transition from clarinet to saxophone, because the fingering is more or less the same. So I said, right, can I join, please? I'll play saxophone now. And I said, all right. And that was how I managed to sort of get in with the cool guys and with the band. I don't know if we were actually called the Valkyries at that time.
Tony Conway left the Valkyries in 1964 to take up the university place he'd turned down a year earlier. However, Tony continued to tour with the Valkyries during his summer breaks. His final stint with the group was in 1971 in Tunisia, after he qualified as a solicitor. Tony now lives in Hampshire, where he plays saxophone with 2 bands in the New Forest area. John Adams became the Valkyries drummer when the group was formed in the early 60s. But he left in 1964, 1 year after the group turned professional, deciding the life of a full-time musician wasn't for him. He now lives in Lancashire, near Rochdale, and he hasn't played the drums since he left the group.
We met on Monday, September the 5th, 1956, or whatever the first Monday in September 1956 was.
Yeah.
And by Wednesday I was round at Alan's house at lunchtime.
Were you?
Yeah, and you got a guitar out and sang to me.
Ah.
And I was gobsmacked because I'd never seen anybody live playing a guitar. Well, sort of playing a guitar live, and no embarrassment whatsoever. He just sang away. All right, that's good.
When John Adams left the Valkyries, he was replaced by Terry McCusker. Terry was already a well-known drummer with Merseybeat groups
jobs with a few other people, and then Alan Burton came along and promised me great wealth and riches, enough to buy a Ford Anglia.
And was this with a trumpet?
By a Ford Anglia.
Wow. And sucked me into it. And
I remember it was a Jaguar.
And then I worked with the Valkyries for a while, and then we went to France to work on the bases.
The American Air Base
in Chinon.
Chinon,
yes. In the Loire district. And we were really callow, weren't we? I mean, we were in Chinon, which is an air base, American air base. And just around the corner was the Chinon Chateau, where Henry II was in prison. He died there, didn't he?
Really? I never knew him.
He didn't even know. Could we be bothered? History. And so we came back.
Terry's prowess with the drums is still in great demand, and he plays with 2 local bands, as well as filling in at one-off gigs. German author Manfred Kollmann is a leading authority on Merseybeat. Manfred has written 2 books on the subject and produced several music CDs. Many of the tracks are original and come from non-commercial sources.
So it was in 1965. I was 13 years old and got it for the first time to sneak around the doorman at the Star Club
in my hometown. We had luckily had a branch of a star club, and I knew I wanted to go into the star club. I've been to the youth centers before where the local groups played and all this, but I wanted to see a professional group, and it had to be from Liverpool. It's as simple as that, because it was, in those days, everybody knew the good music, the good beat is coming from Liverpool. So.
But many of the Merseybeat groups didn't in fact come from Liverpool. The Valkyries came from Birkenhead, Liverpool's poor relation on the other side of the River Mersey. In the 1960s, the spiritual centre of Merseybeat was the Cavern Club in Matthew Street, Liverpool. This archive footage gives us some idea of what the original club was like. It closed in 1973 when work started on an extension to the Merseyrail Underground. In 1984, a replica Cavern Club was opened a short distance from where the original club had been. And on a brick wall on the opposite side of the street are etched the names of every group and artist who played at the original club.
In off the road, and it was a very short corridor.
Yeah.
And then you came to the top of the stairs, and the stairs were all brick.
Yeah.
And they had a very, very steep pitch.
Yeah.
And very narrow.
And you couldn't see in front of the steps in front of you, but there was people you were...
And it was pitch black.
Yeah.
And this smell came up, it was like the smell from Hades.
It was like turnips.
Turnips?
I thought
Sort of
traditional turnips.
Sanilav or the mess.
I thought it was Dettol.
Dettol, yeah, madam. Dettol, yeah.
And then you went down the steps, providing you didn't fall down. And then you came to an area where you turned left and went down three steps.
Yeah.
And then there was a little table on the right with a little red lamp on. And that was where they collected the money. With some bed sitting there.
1 and 6.
Was it a shilling, if you remember, or sixpence or something?
We came into that little changing room at the side, and all 4 of the Beatles were sat in each corner of that little changing room, and they all dressed in black, and they all sort of sat there, looked like that, and they looked out, and they didn't communicate with us at all, or with each other.
Really rocking in Boston, Pittsburgh, deep in the heart of Texas, rocking down Frisco Bay, all over St. Louis, we're down in New Orleans. All the cats wanna dance with sweet little 60, sweet little 60.
My memories of 1960s Merseybeat music are of the club scene being dominated by cover versions of Chuck Berry songs. Chuck Berry was one of several American musicians who appear to have been the inspiration for the music that was born in Liverpool. So how did the American influence reach England? And why Liverpool?
My opinion is that they had an American base in Burtonwood, a big American base in Burtonwood, and so I believe that it's my personal belief from that what I've heard when I spoke to all the others, that the whole thing started more from there, because they started to put something on at the Jive Hive in Crosby, which is not too far away, and when you, for example, talk to Ted Taylor, King Size Taylor, he will confirm that there was the first rock and roll shows, and from there it started. But of course, you have so many stories. But I believe really that the American soldiers that were serving over here had a strong influence on that.
Kisses me and then she holds me tight. Tell your brother everything's alright. That's why I love her. Yes, I love her. Hallelujah. I just love her so.
So what was it about the way the Liverpool groups interpreted American music that gave Merseybeat such a distinctive sound?
So yeah, I reckon Merseybeat definitely had a sound. Not everybody. I mean, like, if you listen to Jerry and the Pacemakers hit records, I wouldn't associate that with the Mersey sound at all. You know, and I'm more like the Big Three and.
We used to spend a lot of time coordinating the bass drum with the bass, didn't we? That was a sort of foundation. The bass and the bass drum played together a lot.
There were only certain groups at the time that I can recall who had that quality in the sound, and the Beatles mastered it, where the bass drum plays with the bass guitar, you know.
Groups like Rolling Storm and the Hurricanes, all the Big Three, that they were always considered too wild in sound to be captured in the studio in London. And the drummers were always replaced by studio musicians. So I think it is a very important part, and you can hear it also on one of my CDs. One of my CDs is opening with "Reelin' and Rockin' by Ogie and the Flintstones. When you listen to that drumming, I mean, that was it was a live cut from a coffee shop in 1961, and for that it's great, still great quality. But when you listen to the drumming there, it was really wild, going all over the place.
A lot of the music we all played then was what they call four in the bar, which is like quarter notes, so it's boom, 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 boom. And most songs had that. It became known as four on the floor. Four beats on the floor, which is the bass drum. So, also another thing in those days, like most people used to play with their foot flat on the foot plate, like this. But we all used to wear either cowboy boots or Cuban heel boots, which the best ones were Anello and David's, which we bought from the Toggery in Stockport. All the bands used to go there, the Hollies, everyone used to buy them, and they were fabulous. But what it meant was you didn't play with your foot flat on the foot plate, because it had something like a 1.5 or a 2-inch heel. You had to play with your toe because your heel couldn't get near the bass drum.
Say it's alright, it's alright. Say it's alright, it's alright. Say it's alright, have a good time. 'Cause it's alright, yeah, it's alright. I'm kinda moving slow when life's rough.
Sounds crazy, really, but even with the amount of power that was being put out, as a drummer, sometimes you couldn't hear a thing that the vocalist was singing, because the speakers were so far forward. Then there would be amplifiers between them and you, and of course the drum kit itself sets up a wall of sound. Sometimes you'd be in a place and it would be dead because it would be nicely carpeted, lots of soft furnishings, lots of curtains, lots of big drapes on the stage, and the sound would be dead, and then you get a really good sound. Then sometimes you'd be in a place where none of those things, it was a hard floor, hard walls, and you would get the sound coming back. So you'd hit the snare drum and you'd hear it coming back, a split second later off the back wall. And it was very confusing. And of course the sound was just whizzing all around the place, just a mishmash of sound. So it was never very good. That's why in the Cavern it was absolutely excellent for sound. And it was a really good sound off stage. It was a good sound on stage as well. But there weren't very many places like that.
The vaulted ceiling at the replica Cavern Club is a reasonably accurate recreation of the original venue. However, the stage extends much further forward. This is to accommodate foldback speakers, which allow the group on stage to hear what they sound like to the audience. But back in the 1960s, things were technically much cruder, and this probably contributed to the raw, unsophisticated but exciting sound of the Merseybeat groups.
When we first used to play, I remember playing down at a place called the Cubic on Conway Street. We had one big amplifier. Instead of being flat on the front, it had speakers facing out different ways, two speakers. And it was called a Watkins Wem or a Wem Watkins. And I think everything went through that. The guitar, the bass, the saxophone, and the microphone. We had one microphone at the time tied to a music stand. You know, you stand music tied to the music stand so we all group around and shout at it. And that was, we only had the one amplifier at that time.
I think Campbell Kelly, he had a good approach to the whole thing. He wanted to be professional and make the thing work. And somehow he organised getting 3 Vox amps, you know, and you see him in the photograph, on chrome stands, and whoa, it blew us away. We've arrived. Having gear like that was just mind-blowing. It was light years from what we'd known before. Incredible.
In the 1960s, I can remember seeing members of groups plus their instruments and equipment on public transport. Just for a bit of fun, I reunited Terry with a vintage bus at the Woodall Transport Museum. Here, he was able to reenact loading his drums onto a bus, just as he would have done 50 years ago. This photograph, taken in 1963, shows the Valkyries posing proudly with their newly acquired second-hand van before they set off to entertain the American GIs at the Toul Air Force Base in France. Adverts had been placed in the local entertainment magazine, Merseybeat, for Liverpool groups to play at the American bases in France, and this was the first of several trips the Valkyries made to Europe.
It was 6 nights a week on this base, playing in this particular GI. Well, it was like a bar, come games room with a stage, and with all the madness that went with that, the fights breaking out amongst the soldiers and things. We had to play every night, but we found ourselves starving because there was just not enough money to buy food. And I remember getting apples and oranges off the trees, not oranges, plums and apples. And I found a 10-franc note when I was walking down to get the bus one morning, and it was like, wow, treasure. And then the GIs would occasionally buy us a burger, that type of thing. The agent for the gig was in Germany. And we were told when we left that he would send the money to the local post office in Nancy each week for us to go and pick up, and we could keep ourselves alive. Well, each week we went, there was nothing there. And it didn't matter how many phone calls were made. You couldn't get through to the guy, or he would say something like, it's on its way or something. And eventually it turned up, but it was in the final week of the month. I seem to recall coming back with maybe £5 or something like that. But after a month of that, £5 is nothing, is it? But it was all experience, wasn't it? You know, that's the only way to look at it. But it paints a bad picture of why you played in a group and all the rest of it. at the time, it was a great feeling, you know, to be doing something that was enjoyable. When you were on stage, it was great fun, and singing for a living, that type of thing, and quite exciting, really. You know, it was an adventure.
In 1964, after Billy May's departure from the group, a song written by Ian Hunter entitled What's Your Name was recorded by the Valkyries at the famous Rye Muse Studios in London. It was released on the Parlophone label with a cover version of Little Richard's Rip It Up on the B-side.
What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Now ain't that a shame?
I think I've said this to James before. I think, looking back on it, there was a kind of process developing there where Merseybeat, dragged along by the Beatles, had become big business, and the big agents in London, those who didn't have any part of this action, were just signing up groups, banging a quick record out. If one took off, they'd got something.
Probably
And
quite correct.
I think they were sort of playing the fruit machine type of thing, you know, taking a gamble on lots of things, hoping they'd get one good one.
And our slot we had, it took us about 20 minutes to get up the bloody stairs, didn't it? Friggin' no. I was behind all these plastic screens. I think I could
Because they
see.
always screen the drummer off, you know. So, yeah.
I think they put a microphone on or something. I couldn't hear anything. Just bashing away. I didn't do anything. I just went like this. And then it's, oh no, you're out of time. So all right, do it again. Right, that's it. Oh, right. Out. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And then when I heard it afterwards, didn't I? Apparently I said, you know, actually in the studio, all these spools, I said, oh, you reminded me of this, or Ian did, or somebody said, the first thing I said was, oh, that sounds great, we sound just like the Undertakers. And then when the record came, I couldn't believe it. Oh, you know, I don't know, from the equipment they got in the studio, but of course they speeded it all up and everything.
They speeded it up by at least a half a tone, yeah.
Come the morning, the sun will shine. Come the morning, you'll be mine. Come the morning when you'll be standing right by me. What's your name now? That's all I ask you to be. What's your name? What's your name?
I much prefer What's Your Name being played live rather than the studio version. Why the track had to be speeded up doesn't make any sense. But anyway, Merseybeat is probably something that can only be appreciated live, and a recording can never do it justice. What's Your Name was one of several songs written by Ian Hunter, but taking his songs to the world beyond Liverpool wasn't easy.
As the manager had said, oh, you're writing songs, we were writing songs. This is their manager. And he said, well, why don't you go and see the Rolling Stones? And it was the name of the, what was the name of the, Andrew Loog Oldham and Mick Jagger, and they lived in the same, in St John's Wood. And he said, here's the address, go round to St John's Wood and say, I've sent you these songs, do you want to do any of them? Have you got any ideas, any advice? So me and Alan went round. We knocked on the door opened, and Andrew Loog Oldham and Mick Jagger looked, no, it wasn't Mick Jagger, it was Keith Richards, looked out, and when we spoke, he said something like, there's two effing Northerners here, and Andrew Loog Oldham said, get rid of them, and slammed the door, and he didn't even let us speak or anything, slammed the door on our faces, and we came back then, and we got all the way down to London. That was the purpose of the trip.
After the Beatles had burst onto the international music stage in 1963 with their hit single Love Me Do, the whole world wanted to hear the music of Liverpool groups. In 1966, the colourful Cuban impresario Ramiro Arango became the Valkyries' manager. And with an ever-changing lineup, but with Ian Hunter and Alan Burton remaining at its core, the group embarked on an ambitious worldwide tour. Italy, Japan, Taiwan and Persia, to name just a few of the countries they played in. This film footage is from a Beirut television show, the Lebanese equivalent of Top of the Pops.
In Naples, we were playing in a restaurant called El Sombrero, Spanish, I know, but it was in Italy, it was in Naples, believe me. And the American Eighth Fleet was in the port, and some of the officers were in the restaurant one night, said, "Oh, you guys, you got to come and play on board the ship." I think they had, was it a frigate? It was the lead ship in the fleet, whatever it was, and they wanted us to go and play on the ship for the sailors. And we did. We got all the equipment and put it on this little boat. What do you call a boat that flits between the main ship and the land? It's got a tender. Yeah. That's right. Piled it over on the tender very precariously, and we had to hold it up like rope ladders on the side of this frigate. And when we started to play on the main deck, they had the radar thing going around like this, watching out for the Russian fighters coming over, you know. They lived in this like Wild West mentality. And every time it came round, our amplifiers went. So we can't play with that going on every 30 seconds, you know. So somebody said, well, we'll have to phone the Admiral and see if we can turn it off while you play, because the Russians might come and invade while you're playing. So we had to get special permission from the Admiral of the 8th Fleet to turn the radar off.
Every November, Alan Burton, Ian Hunter, Tony Conway and Terry McCusker reunite as the Valkyries to perform for the guests at Ian Hunter's birthday party, bringing back to life that very special and unique sound of 1960s Merseybeat.
The sun gonna shine in my face on Sunday. Just you wait and see. Just wait and see. Someday you find I want to come back to you. Just you wait and see. Just wait and see. You have got such great things in your life. You're so down on me. I wonder why. The sun's gonna shine.
There will never be another time like the Merseybeat era. Popular music has become excessively polished, overproduced, reliant on technology, and driven by commercial greed. It's been taken out of the hands of those whose only reason for wanting to perform live music was because they enjoyed doing it. Perhaps there isn't enough recognition of the contribution of groups like the Valkyries, who along with hundreds of others in and around 1960s Liverpool were at the epicentre of a musical earthquake that was nothing less than a revolution.
We were doing all right, I thought, weren't we? Because we were getting bags of practice. Because say when we had these bookings when we came back from France, it was hard work, wasn't it? I mean,
In France,
there was 2 and 3 gigs a night, and then when one of them leads up the stairs, it's like, what time did we used to play Queen's Hall in Preston on a Friday? Was that midnight or 1 o'clock? I think it was 1 o'clock till 2.
Yeah.
You know, it was hard going. You know.
Can you remember doing a double in the Cavern and Queen's Hall in Preston, and topping the bill in the Cavern was the Beatles, and topping the bill in Preston was the Stones?
I remember the Stones being there.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we did. I'm sure we did.
Well, we played with the
did
Beatles more than once.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah. I think it was an all-nighter at the Cavern. We started off early. It was an all-nighter at the Queen's.